great moments are born from great opportunity.
If you want to be loved as real champions, worthy champions, you're going to have to work and improve and change.
The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Hell yeah.
They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second.
Being perfect is about being able to look your friends in the eye and know that you didn't let them down because you told them the truth. And that truth is that you did everything that you could. There wasn't one more thing that you could have done. Can you live in that moment?
If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
This is your time.
The only ones who are going to tell me when I'm through doing my thing is you people here.
Is this your last game?
Well, I'll answer this question one time, and that is that I'm going to give myself an opportunity to think about the season, think about a lot of things, just like I did last year, and make a decision.
If this does end up being your last season, was it worth it? Would you have any regrets about coming back? And if it was worth it, I guess what makes that decision worth it? I mean, it's so many hours and so much work. I don't know how to sum that up better. Sorry.
I would never regret it. Never. No complaints, no regrets. Man, I've always tried to play this game with a great respect and a great reverence for it. And man, I appreciate all that this game has given to me. There are obviously so many incredible memories, so many incredible relationships that have come as a result of playing this game. And man, you find out so much about yourself, and you have to fight through so much, when you play this game. And I'd say this season probably had to fight through more than I've ever had to in any other season in my career. From injury to all the COVID stuff to just crazy circumstances. Man, it was worth every moment of it.
It really doesn't make a difference if you're a New Orleans Saints fan or not. You got to respect Drew Brees because he's a guy who knows exactly what the game gave him, what he gave back to the game. And now the question is his time over? It may indeed be. Hi, once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome into another edition of The Man in the Arena, and this time outside the lines, because we're going to look at more than just sports. It's a mix of sports and news, but we are going to begin with the National Football League because Drew Brees is one of the big stories here today. Did he stay a season too long? And then what happens to the Saints after this? And then there's Tom Brady, there's the Super Bowl, there's Belichick talk. My goodness, there's so much more. That's why we're here. It's a pleasure to welcome in once again, everybody, the man who is outside the lines, the lawyer, the former player agent, the agent provocateur, if you will. It is always a pleasure to welcome Joe Casale into the show. My friend, allow me first of all to say welcome, but my sympathies for you as a Saints fan. I know it was a tough game to watch on Sunday.
It's a game, not a funeral. If there's anything we learned this year with everything that's going on, I wrote this last night, said you can get over bad sports losses really easy when you read that we have to vet our National Guard to make sure we don't have domestic terrorists in them for our inauguration. So that'll ground you pretty quickly that it's a game. You like your team to win. Your team didn't win. Everybody left that stadium yesterday alive. Life goes on. And really, I mean, in the times that we're in, I think that's the way you have to keep it in a proper perspective.
I mean, I know that's a good perspective, but is it almost terrible that we have to think about it that way, Joe? Because sports is supposed to be, it's our escape. And you and I, every time we've talked like this during the COVID-19 time, it has been about how the escapes are going and how people are dealing with it, but it's tragic that at this time in our lives and in our society, that we've got to look at a sporting event and say, well, gee, they only had 10% of the people that were there, but thank God it happened, and nobody died. I mean, that in itself is frightening.
I mean, look at where sports is today. The NBA has a COVID break, a complete COVID outbreak right now. They're not shutting it down because they need the money. The National Hockey League is starting up. They're playing before empty arenas. They had to get special clearance, the Canadian government, for the teams in Canada to be able to travel in and out of the U.S. Baseball, we're listening to owners who are all billionaires cry how poor they are, which is a whole other deal. Football is getting through the season, but it's been a struggle, no matter how you want to spin it. We're dealing in real world situations. We have 400,000 Americans dead. We have a president completely off the rails. We have his cult followers trying to overthrow an election. I mean, you see what everything's going on, and you watch the game and you say, geez, I hope my team wins. They didn't win. It sucks. It's a shame. But guess what? We got bigger problems afoot, and life will go on. I mean, I'm reading all of these things about Drew Brees this morning as if Drew Brees died. Drew Brees has had a remarkable career. He's made $300 million. He helped transform a city's sports identity and its own identity post-Katrina. He has carried himself like a gentleman in 95% of the instances he's come in contact with people.
Fair. He's
going to roll from New Orleans to a job with NBC Sports. He's got a good gig going. He got everything out of his body that he could get. People forget, because we live, from hashtag to hashtag, that 15, 16 years ago, Drew Brees had 12 brackets in his shoulder. And a coach by the name of Nick Saban had to make a decision. Do I sign Drew Brees in Miami, or do I sign Dante Culpepper? And they made a decision to go for Culpepper because the idea at that time was it's easier to come back from a torn ACL than to come back from major reconstructive shoulder surgery.
Yep.
And you look at how the course of the NFL and Nick Saban's career and the Miami Dolphins and the New Orleans Saints, everything that's transpired from there. And then I read this morning, well, Drew Brees only won one Super Bowl. It's one more than Dan Marino. One more than
It is true,
Frank
too.
Tarkenton.
I mean, I don't think, and that's part of the reason why people don't understand, Joe, if they're not in the game. Look, you and I are not athletes, but we've covered the sports. I've covered sports for more than 30 years. And I understand what it takes to get there, and I understand the sacrifice that it takes to get there, and the luck, the sheer God forbidden luck that it takes just to be on the right team at the right time with the right people around you, and then be able to win one championship, much less multiple championships. Hell yeah, Brady's a great player, but he lucked into a situation, and there is a piece of luck in there. I don't think people ever realize that as to what it takes to get there. I think that maybe it's been soft chewed by a lot of the talk yackers and such, that, he didn't win 12 Super Bowls. Big deal. Neither did you, jackass.
You're not ordained to win a championship.
No.
I use this analogy a lot when I talk to my friends. Dan Marino and Drew Brees have had similar careers in the sense that Marino came to Miami. He was 30 years ahead of his time throwing the football. He played for a Hall of Fame coach. He transformed a city from a sports city. I mean, when in 1983, the three biggest sports in Miami were the Dolphins, the University of Miami, only because Howard Schnellenberger won a national championship that year, and a highlight. And you look at where we are 36 years later. Florida is a four major sports. You have multiple college sports. Dan Marino set every record imaginable. Didn't win a Super Bowl, not for lack of trying. It didn't work out. And he completely transformed a city to today. 20 plus years after retirement, he still makes more money off the field than any South Florida athlete. You know, with endorsements and commercials, he's still revered. Drew Brees is on the same track, only he won a Super Bowl. And so
he won a Super Bowl.
Guys,
I mean,
they've had remarkable careers. They've gotten everything out of their athletic skills. Everything, every ounce. Marino left it all on the field. So did Drew Brees. That's all you can ask. And from a fan's perspective, you want your team to put themselves in a position to win every year. The Saints put all the chips in the middle of the table this year. Cashed out from salary cap. They gave it all they had. Fell short. That's okay. I can live with that rather than hearing Hal Steinbrenner talk about how difficult money is with a franchise worth $5.2 billion. See, as a fan, you don't want to hear that.
No.
You know, I mean, so you want it's that slippery slope you ride. You want your team to be all in. They're all in. That doesn't mean they're always going to win. I'll give you another example. Mike Trout is the best baseball player I have seen in person in my life. And it's not even close. I mean, there is nothing that Mike Trout can't do on a baseball field. He's remarkable. Hasn't sniffed the playoffs, let alone a World Series.
Well, again, it comes down to luck. You've got to be in the right place at the right time.
Right. It's luck. It's being with the right organization. It's things breaking right. Look, at 2018, the Saints were the best team in football, and it wasn't close. They got cheated out of a Super Bowl by an incompetent officiating crew. I mean, that's not Drew Brees' fault. You know, that's not Sean Payton's fault. I mean, that's what happened. If it happened to a major market team, if that was the New England Patriots, New York Giants, you know, Dallas Cowboys, they would have gotten on the phone to Al Riveron in New York and say, you changed the damn call on the field. They didn't do that. It didn't happen. And for the last 2 years, the Saints have basically, it's been, you know, chasing the tail and the dog. They're trying to get back. And it fell short. Not through lack of effort or lack of preparation or lack of will. That's sports. Nobody's ordained to go out, you know, with a magic carpet. And so it just happens. But to be in that arena, to be able to continue to give it your all. I mean, Drew Brees will walk away from the NFL with zero regrets, with saying, I gave every single ounce that I had, physically and mentally, to my team. That's pretty good, because not every athlete does that. There's so many athletes that years later say, wish I trained harder. I wish I didn't do drugs. I wish I stayed out of the bars. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. Drew Brees has every, you know, it's like Marino. Marino transitioned out of football smoothly because he knows he did everything he could. You know, and that's all you can ask of athletes. I remember Roger Federer telling me the toughest championship the toughest major ever had to win was the first one. Because after he won the first one, he said to himself, I don't care if I never win another major. I achieved my dream. And so for him, it wasn't, I got to chase Pete Sampras. I got to chase Rafa Nadal. I got to do this, I got to do that. It was, I got my one. And that settled Zen, if you will, made him even better because he wasn't chasing. He wasn't fearful of losing anymore. And you know, athletes have that weird ethos about them. You know, some of them roll into these things. Some of them take it harder than others. Some of them handle it. Some of them chase. And they never get there. You know, for Brees,
there's
he
a point.
Did everything he could.
There's a point. I want to stop there because let's get on to that chase. Because you're right. There are the athletes sometimes who simply don't understand. They don't want to grasp it. They don't want to understand that their career is over. I get that. We've been there. We've seen it far too often. Look, I think the first time that I ever saw it in my life, and maybe the time a lot of people saw it, I was a kid, and I saw Willie Mays stumble in center field when he was playing for the New York Mets. Everybody and their mother knew that Willie had gone too far. He'd reached into the well once too often, and it was pathetic to watch a guy like that, such a great legend, as he stumbled around. Okay, Drew Brees did not stumble around, but is it not fair to say that in that chase, In that chase itself, Drew Brees stayed one season too long. He shouldn't have played this season. It wasn't there. He didn't have the gas. You even said it on your Facebook page. He didn't have the gas in his arm anymore.
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. He fractured 11 ribs and punctured a lung this year. Now, if you were to say to
Right.
Drew Brees last April, you're going to puncture your lung and suffer 11 cracked ribs, he'd have said, hello, NBC Sports. But he...
Well, sure. But we all know that's part of the game.
Right. He came out of last season healthy. So, and I think if they won in 2018, he would have retired. I believe that. He was trying to win. The team was going all in. It wasn't like the team was saying, hey, Drew, we're going to cut back on our commitments, salary cap wise. We're going to cut a few guys. We're not going to bring in a team. They went all in with him. So, to me, he got hurt this year. And that kind of set everything in motion because he was never really healthy. And it's hard to throw the ball when your ribs are cracked. It's even harder.
But it is easy for us to say right now, looking back, that if it had been 2 years, if he had been 2 years younger, 3 years younger, maybe those ribs wouldn't have cracked as easy. Maybe he would have been able to get out of the way.
I don't know
Maybe
about
things
that.
would have
I mean,
happened. I know it's this whole
cracked his
whataboutism that
ribs.
we're always into on politics these days, but it's whataboutism in sports as well.
His ribs would have broken a 30-year-old guy's ribs.
Okay.
I mean, it's football. It happens.
Yes.
And it's always that age-old thing in sports when a 35-year-old guy gets hurt, he's too old. When a young guy gets hurt, he's rehabbing. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, it's sports. It's not a reality show in the sense that we don't have a scripted ending. Everybody doesn't end the same way. And we're in that hot take revolution where we want to have that pristine hot take and we want things to be teed up for us. And it just doesn't work that way. I don't think the Saints or Drew Brees or anybody has anything to be ashamed of themselves for. They fell short. They had their run. Now they're going to retool, and life and sports goes on. I mean, that's what happens in this.
Then
business.
Taking that to the next level, then for the Saints, it is indeed then the end of this current New Orleans Saints run, as you're even admitting here. They're going to have to really go in, retool. Money's going to have to be put in different places. They're going to have to spend it differently. And in this National Football League, the way it goes now, you and I both know that when you retool a team, you might be looking at 2 years, maybe 3 years, the way things go right now, and certainly the way salary caps are set. So is it not fair to say that the Saints right now are looking at a downtime? They're going to have to just face it and suck it up.
Well, I don't know about downtime in the sense it's going to be a much different roster next year.
Sure.
And in terms of in terms of the salary cap, you're going to read, they're $98 million over the cap. It's like Andy Ellsberg, who is the salary cap genius for the Miami Heat. Every year you hear the Heat are in salary cap hell. They can't get anybody. They can't sign
And every
anybody.
year Andy gets them out of it.
They do these things. Right. Mickey Loomis is the same way. I think the Saints are going to be like a lot of teams. They're going to look at their roster, and then they have to make certain judgments. They gave Michael Thomas the largest contract in the history of the NFL for wide receiver. Michael Thomas was hurt during the year, most of the year. He got suspended for a team violation. When teams give players contracts of that size, it's not just for their on-field production. They want more from them. So do the Saints say it's a bad year, we'll start fresh next year? Or do the Saints say, you know what? We can put up with nonsense when we're competing for a Super Bowl and Drew Brees is in the room. But when he's not and we're retooling, I don't know if this is worth the risk. So, I mean, those are the questions that every team has to answer themselves. I mean, Josh Gordon has had how many chances in the NFL? 12? Because everybody thinks they can unlock talent, I think the interesting part of the Saints, and I know Sean Payton has said Taysom Hill is the guy. Taysom Hill's not going to be the quarterback next year. It's Brian Cashman once told the assembled media in New York that Bubba Crosby was going to be the starting center fielder for the New York Yankees. That didn't happen. Okay, so, these guys all say these things, but you have Jameis Winston. He's 25 years old. He's a year removed from a 5,000-yard, 30-touchdown season.
But he's a head case,
His
Joe.
problem has been turnovers. But you're Sean Payton. You are one of the best people in the sport in terms of working with quarterbacks. Do you see enough in Jameis Winston if you're not in the derby to try to get Deshaun Watson? I mean, everybody in the NFL is going to try to fleece Houston for Deshaun Watson. Absent that,
They're already doing it, sure.
what quarterback available in the NFL at 25 years old who has had the success that Jameis Winston has had?
Well, but come on, wait a minute. Success? He hasn't had extended success.
Yeah, he's had success. How many? There's only been 13 quarterbacks in the history of the league that have had 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns in a season.
I get that in a season, but are you saying that you're willing to put a team's fortunes on the back of Jameis Winston, who in many ways is still a head case? Look, he's got $1 million. It's the old adage, as far as I'm concerned. He's got $1 million arm and a 10-cent head.
But we don't. But see, here's what we don't know. We don't know what he's done in the year he's been with the Saints. By everybody's, words that they've heard in the room, he's been a model teammate.
That's a big stretch, Joe.
Peyton, but people grow up at different times. We don't know. What I'm saying is we always fall in love with the next flavor of the month. 2 years ago, Sam Donald was can't miss. Now get rid of him, get Trevor Lawrence. 2 weeks ago it was it was the next great player is somewhere else, and we're this and we're there, and it's Ohio State's quarterback is better than Clemson. It's always this. The toughest thing I have found in football is, and it's something the sofa scouts think they can do what they can't, it's evaluating quarterbacks. There are guys in the game who've been in it for 30 years and whiff.
And they still don't get it right.
Dan Marino, 5 other quarterbacks went ahead of Dan Marino.
Well, let's be fair. There were a lot of things going on at Pitt that kept Marino from being the first quarterback drafted. We can go on and tell those stories forever.
But it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard. I mean, Bill Polian had to be talked out of taking Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning. Okay? I mean, it's hard to figure out who's good and who isn't.
Let me take that argument, though.
You've got a 25-year-old kid who the odds are, if you don't get in the Deshaun Watson derby, who is going to be available to you, whether it's in the draft or via trade, that is better from a potential standpoint than what you have with Jameis
you and I both know potential is a dirty word. I mean, potential's a really nice word, but it's one of those words that you say out of the corner of your mouth, and half the time it doesn't turn up to be anything. My question to you is, and I understand where you're going with this.
He is a player.
But do you want to? And this is the Saints side of things.
And you're not paying him $25 million. You're paying him $5 to $8 million.
Right, but you're still putting the fortunes of the franchise on his arm.
Other players in. But I mean, you're going to have somebody play quarterback next year.
Granted.
The odds are, unless it's Deshaun Watson, he's not going to be making $20 million. So you're going to have to get somebody that can play the position at a high level and be able to, you can field a team around him because you're not going to be in cap hell. I mean, I think Jameis Winston's going to be the starting quarterback there next year.
Well, okay, let's go for that then. Winston becomes the starting quarterback. I'll go with you on that. But knowing full well the problems that this guy has had in his life at 25 years of age, and again, I'm going to go back to the 10-cent head issue. If you're the Saints, and I realize that you've got cap hell that you're into right now, you've got to have somebody who can step in behind him, whether it's that seasoned veteran like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type, not him, but that type, because if you get a Jameis Winston and then you put an untested rookie in there, or somebody who's just a second-year player as your backup, you're inviting disaster. You've got to have somebody who can step in because Winston could implode at any given time. I still don't have that kind of confidence where I'm going to say, 16 games, you're the guy.
Yeah, sure. And conversely, he could have had a year there and like Teddy Bridgewater had and cash in and make himself a lot of money because he showed, that he could still play. I mean, the thing that gets lost in the quarterback thing is Sean Payton is 7-1 in the last 8 games. He didn't have Drew Brees start. So I have a lot of confidence that Sean Payton can draw the best out of the quarterback position. I mean, the quarterback position is always going to get the most attention. I think the Saints have bigger issues than quarterback because I think quarterback they'll figure out. I think they have bigger issues in terms of shaping the roster because of certain cap situations. And, that's going to be the interesting part. It's going to be the most fascinating offseason they've had in 15 years because there's that uncertainty. But with that uncertainty, there comes a level of excitement too, because you're going to be able to do some things maybe you didn't think you'd be able to do when Drew was there because you were so intent on, we got to stack the roster. We got to put ourselves in a position to win a Super Bowl. There's not going to be any pressure on the Saints to win a Super Bowl next year.
No, of course not.
Nobody's there where you're saying, my quarterback is at the last end of his career, he's going to win. And that is the last time they really felt they did that was 2017, and they had the best draft in the history of the franchise, and it completely changed the direction they were going in. So, that's the thing about the NFL. It changes from year to year. A year ago at this time, nobody had Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. They were all saying, you know what, he and Belichick will work it out, or he's going to end up in Los Angeles. Ended up in Tampa Bay. So, that's the part of sports that makes it interesting. I mean, I'm always fascinated by the offseason when the temperature is lowered after you lose a tough game and teams start looking at their roster and they start asking the hard questions.
Okay.
Do we want the guy or do we want not
I
want the guy?
Let me move on because we got
in New Orleans this offseason.
We got a lot to do, and I want to get off New Orleans here for a moment. I want to go on because you mentioned the name of Tom Brady. So briefly, let's just discuss this because Brady has got his eyes set on another Super Bowl. One of the big arguments, debates, discourses, whatever you want in New England specifically, is Brady versus Belichick. So the simple question is, did Tom Brady make Bill Belichick better and a champion, or did Bill Belichick make Tom Brady? I mean, that's if you got to choose one, that seems to be the biggest issue right now. People saying that without Brady, Belichick would never have won a Super Bowl. However, without Belichick, Brady would not have been in the position to win a Super Bowl. So who made who?
I mean, they made each other. I mean, that's like the dumb talk radio argument.
Thank you. Okay.
I mean, look, Bill Belichick won Super Bowls as a coordinator before Tom Brady.
Right.
Tom Brady couldn't get on the field consistently in Michigan. Okay. He got a great opportunity in New England, and New England was a perfect fit for him at Belichick and where they were going and what they were doing. It was a great marriage. Okay. I mean, and while we play this game of lauding Brady, I mean, look, he beat a bad Washington football team and a beat up Saints team. If he goes in the Lambeau Field and beats the best team in football right now, then we can maybe have a deeper conversation. But let's not get too crazy because it wasn't like Brady played great yesterday. They had 4 turnovers. 3 of them, they got the ball inside the 20-yard line and cashed in for 21 points. That's taking advantage. That's great football to take advantage of those things. But it wasn't like Tom Brady was slinging it around the field. I mean, he wasn't that great. It's just that he won. I mean, and that's, I think both guys made each other.
Right. That's the whole point here. Without Belichick, Brady likely would never have been on the field as a starting quarterback in the first place because Belichick saw something in an emergency moment when he needed him, but he is also the guy who put Brady on the team and put him in the position to win. And then Brady is the guy who makes Belichick look good because he has the athletic ability and the mental skills, if you will, to take that playbook and translate it down to winning and be able to make the passes and the plays. So you're right. It's another one of those talk radio yackers. We don't have anything else to talk about, so let's throw it out there just to see if we can get somebody to piss all over this question because the phones aren't lighting up. We got to light the phones up.
The hidden hero in all this is Bart Scott. If Bart Scott doesn't rupture Drew Bledsoe's spleen, Tom Brady's not seeing the field. So, Bart Scott is the guy that changed the course of history. because it was him getting Bledsoe hurt. Then they insert Brady, and the Tuck rule takes effect. They beat the Rams, and we're off and running. I mean, that's sports, Ed. That's what makes it amazing. I mean,
I agree. It goes back to what we said.
Story.
It's all the moments that things happen, the instances that it happens, the luck. You got to be there in the right place at the right time.
And taking advantage of it. I mean, to Tom Brady's credit, he took his career to another level. I mean, he changed his diet. He got a personal throwing coach. I mean, the guy just
changed his wife
in and said, yeah. I mean, the guy turned himself from a 5th-round draft pick into what he did. I mean, not a lot of guys do that.
No, it's true.
There are a lot of guys that have passed through the doors with more talent than Tom Brady.
The guys put in the work.
It's pretty remarkable.
Hate them all you want. The guys put in the work. And everybody today is talking about not necessarily what happened in the game, Joe, but I think the wonderful human moment in the game that happened was when Brady and Brees are meeting on the field after the game, and it's two professionals getting together, and it's two guys who have a tremendous amount of respect for each other, and Brady winds up throwing Brees' kid a touchdown. That, to me, is the epitome of what competition in the game is all about. Two great stars, two future Hall of Famers that have such wonderful respect for each other.
Yeah, and I mean, we get lost in the fact that these are human beings. I mean, Joe Torre, the former manager of the Yankees, had a great quote when people were talking to him about analytics. And he said, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that, people that play this game have a heartbeat. I mean, these are people, they're human beings. You're close to the same age, you have kids, you've got a perspective on life. They played against each other in college. You're talking about going back, 25 plus years. There's a lot of things there. And, these guys, fans treat the game much differently than the players do. The players, this is one big club, and they understand they're a member of the club. And with quarterbacks, it's even different. It's even a smaller club. And with Brady and Brees, how many other quarterbacks are sitting in there in the executive center of that country club? Maybe Peyton Manning. There's a small room.
Many.
I mean, there's not a lot of chairs in the club of Tom Brady and Drew Brees in that quarterback club. So those guys have had a unique and intertwined history, and it's very cool to see.
It's just great. It was such a human moment
with people to make it understand these are human beings. They're not machines. They're not robots. They're not perfect. They don't always say and do the right thing. They're just like us. Only they are athletically gifted. And that's
only they can throw a football 150 yards in a blink. Yeah. So
and it's a cool thing to see those guys, do that.
So then let's go from
the cameras around them and on all of that.
Let's go from the human side of sports now to the human side of life, which we touched on very briefly at the top, because on Outside the Lines, we try to hit a little bit of everything. And certainly this week we have to, as we are doing the show live on Monday, January the 18th, we are looking at the inauguration of Joe Biden this week in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump's final days as President of the United States. There's a number of things to discuss here, Joe, but let's try and look at it from a few very specific areas. First of all, Donald Trump will not attend the inauguration. There's a lot of talk about what he will do afterwards. But where does, in your opinion, Donald Trump go from here? And will he remain? I know that, again, there's going to be people who will hammer away at this word right away. But will he remain, can he remain dangerous? Because there is no doubt that what has happened on one side of the political aisle has affected the other side of the political aisle and has affected the United States right now to where a lot of people are scared spitless about what's going to happen because of what basically turns out to be homegrown terrorism that has become a real part of our lives here in the last few years, certainly the last couple of weeks.
He's the most dangerous man in America as long as he's free. He's the most dangerous man in America. I think one of the decisions that President Biden's going to have to make is that does he include Trump in security briefings, which is something that has been done as a courtesy to all living presidents. That's going to be a very important decision. He's obviously going to be facing quite possibly indictments in several states. So I think when people say, can Donald Trump retain power? I don't think Donald Trump's going to have a lot of power, because I think Donald Trump's time is going to be spent trying to stay out of jail, because I don't think there's any question he's going to be indicted in several states for various crimes, from financial crimes to quite possibly inciting this insurrection. So his legal problems are just beginning. I wrote the other day, on January 21st, presidential immunity goes away. And this is private citizen Trump. And if you were his lawyer, you would be telling him, get ready, because we're going to be spending the next several years trying to keep you out of jail. And all the tweets and all the victimization and all of the nonsense in the world is not going to matter. And before people say, well, that's all political, it actually isn't. It's all evidence. You produce evidence, and a defendant has to defend himself. That's how it works in this country. And if he is wrongly accused, then he's going to have his day in court. That's how it works. But the reality of where we are today is, it is what, 3:36 in the afternoon, and we have more troops in Washington, D.C. than we do in Syria and Afghanistan combined. That's a disgrace. And I don't care what your political leanings are, that it's reprehensible that people think that's acceptable. It's reprehensible that people think an election was fixed when it was not. It's reprehensible that people walk around believing anything they want to believe to make themselves feel good, pull something like breaking into the Capitol, get arrested, and then demand the President of the United States pardon them. I mean, that's not how it works. So, we're in a very dangerous time in the country. Donald Trump is a very dangerous guy, because the first time in his life, he's going to be held accountable for his actions. And let's be clear about something. If he's not held accountable for his actions, then things are going to actually get worse, because someone smarter and someone more cunning than Donald Trump is going to seize the mantle and say, I can ascend to power doing the same things, but just not being a functional moron like Donald Trump. And that makes it even more dangerous. So I don't believe, there's an old saying, coincidences take a lot of planning. I don't think it's a coincidence that Merrick Garland was selected by President Biden as his attorney general. What is, beside being rejected by Mitch McConnell to even be heard for a Supreme Court nomination, what is Merrick Garland most known for? Prosecuting domestic terrorists.
Domestic terror.
So without Joe Biden saying a word, he's made it pretty clear what the direction of the Justice Department is going to be. They are going to prosecute domestic terrorists. If those domestic terrorists are regular citizens, if they're members of Congress who assisted in this, I mean, it's gonna happen. And it's gonna be a dark time in the country, but it has to happen, because we can't ever allow this to happen again, ever.
Which leads us then to, working off what you just said, the people who were involved in the insurrection riots in Washington, D.C., many of them who were, simply put, normal citizens, and who are now coming up with some of the most beautifully crafted, wonderfully done excuses for their behavior in Washington, D.C. on that day. This is from NBC television, from the Today Show. The interview is with a lady named Jenna Ryan, who is a realtor in the Dallas, Texas area. Everybody needs to listen closely to the questioning and to also what she says with regard to what happened. And this is someone who, quite frankly, was thrilled to be in Washington on that day.
You feel like a martyr?
I do. I have the right to feel this way. So whether or not you agree with me, is your right.
Ryan, who's now been arrested for trespassing and disorderly conduct at the Capitol on January 6th, told me she had no idea there was violence going on there.
People were screaming, "Hang Mike Pence." Tear gas and pepper spray. People were rappelling up the side of the Capitol. Windows were being broken. It's just hard to imagine that in the midst of all of that, you were unaware that there was anything violent going on.
I'm an honest person, and if I felt in danger, I would have been out of there.
Yet some of her own social media posts, many now deleted, raise significant questions.
We're all going to be up here and we're going to be breaking those windows.
The day before, on January 5th, Ryan made it clear she was delighted to be heading to D.C. on a private jet.
President Trump requested that we be in D.C. on the 6th.
The group, D.C. bound to stop the steal.
So the president had been tweeting that the election had been stolen.
Absolutely. And I, not just the president, there's also, I follow everything that Rudy Giuliani says.
But 86 judges in 60 cases found no irregularities.
Some Republicans, some appointed by Donald Trump, said that there hadn't been fraud. That didn't persuade you.
That didn't faze me because no one heard the evidence. And that is what is devastating.
Nor did it faze her that election officials in all 50 states certified the vote. But she says she played no part in the violence that left 5 dead, though she does acknowledge being angry.
No, you cannot take our country!
Especially when Vice President Pence did not stop the certification of the election.
We're going to go down and storm the Capitol. They're down there right now, and that's why we came.
Then, just outside the Capitol,
We're going to go in here. Life or death. It doesn't matter. Here we go.
Now, stormed the Capitol doesn't sound like, those aren't peaceful words. We're going to go life or death. Those don't sound like peaceful, benign words, the sort of scenario you're suggesting.
Well, they may not sound like peaceful words, but I'm a very passionate woman. If you look up the term storm, you can storm in the kitchen. What I meant, life or death, is if someone kills me, I will stand for my truth, even if someone kills me.
Joe, I got to be honest. My jaw hit the floor. I had to watch that interview at least 3 times. When you say storm, you can mean storm in the kitchen. These are people who are delusional to the point of actually needing a 2-drink minimum and a cover charge for what they say, because they are indicted and found guilty by their own social media postings and by their own words. Yet we are consistently being bombarded now by people who are giving us excuses after excuses. Oh, and let's not forget the politicians, Joe, the people who have backed this for 4 weeks or 4 months, if you will, who are now asking us in a mea culpa tour to please, if you will, forgive us for what we did, because now we have seen the error of our ways. Whether it's a realtor in Dallas or a lawmaker in Dallas, how can we, for one moment, believe anything these people are saying when their own words and actions have indicted them and found them guilty?
Well, they're all cult members. They're also all domestic terrorists, and they should be prosecuted and treated as such. She's fortunate she's not black and unarmed, because she probably would have been shot dead. The reality of this situation is all of these white people have been given far too much leeway to be domestic terrorists, and this is what you get. I think, there's an old saying in terms of forgiveness, there's an old Hollywood agent saying, and that is, just because you said you're sorry doesn't mean we have to have lunch. All of these politicians who are now trying to say mea culpa because their corporate donations are drying up, there's going to be expulsion hearings involving some of them, if not all of them, that's not going to cut it. You made a decision to try to overturn an election was not fixed. You were incited an insurrection. In some cases, may have financed it and supported it. Those are crimes. You're going to end up going to jail. And that's just the reality of it. And all of these people who thought it was such the coolest thing in the world to go into Nancy Pelosi's office and steal her laptop or take pictures of notes in offices, they're going to go to jail. But they're cult members. And what they need is the deprogramming. They don't need to be coddled. They don't need to be told how difficult things are. They need to be deprogrammed, because there's a difference between being part of a club and being part of a cult. If you're part of a club, you can work together and try to find some shared interest and shared good. If you're part of a cult, it has a 100% failure rate. People in cults usually end up dead. There's no successful cult. We don't have a cult in the country that started out as a cult and then went on to do wonderful things in the country. That's not how things work. And unfortunately, what has happened with the Trump mega crowd is they've become a cult, and some of them have become domestic terrorists, and they need to be treated as such. We don't need to understand them. We don't need to sit in a diner in Iowa and have to hold their hand and listen to how difficult it is. We don't have to listen to them repeat online posts that are 100% false, but because they make them feel good, we have to understand them. No, we really don't. If you break the law, you get prosecuted, you go to jail. That's how it works. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you flew to Washington in a private jet. I don't care if you want to tell me what the meaning of storm is. You are a domestic terrorist. You want to really fix these people? Stick them in Guantanamo for 3 years under the Padilla Act and figure out a time you feel like trying them. And we'll see if they still want to play this game.
But when you talk about deprogram,
it insults all of our intelligence to give all of these criminals a forum.
The word you used in there, though, I want to get to this.
Stick them in jail and leave them there.
You use the word deprogram. Is it possible? Honestly, is it possible to deprogram people whom, as the New Yorker magazine showed us in this video that people who are watching us live and also watching us on YouTube and other formats can see, these people who were in the chambers, who are there taking pictures, looking for things that they can go after the lawmakers with. Here's a guy, there's got to be something in here we can fucking use against these scumbags. I'm not insulting anybody. Those are the exact words that he used. How do you deprogram this, Joe? That doesn't seem to be possible. Yes, I get it. Throw them in jail. They're terrorists. But there doesn't seem to be any end to this, because no matter where Donald Trump goes from here, homegrown terror is a reality. Look, people, this, and you can see it in the video now. They had to be prepared for this, because here's a group outside the Capitol who built a hangman's noose. They have the gallows built with the noose there. They were prepared for this, and there's going to be more of them, Joe. There's no deprogramming these people. It'll never happen.
Well, that's outside my pay group. I know that you have people who have experience dealing with cults. The Biden administration would be wise to consult with them in terms of how to get the message out and how to communicate in terms of dealing with cults. And you know what? Like I said earlier, you're going to have to prosecute these people. You're going to have to treat them like you would any terrorist. Unfortunately, in the early stages of this investigation, that's not happening. A lot of them are being released on their own recognizance, which is an unbelievable mistake.
And some of them are already moving on. Some of them are already disappearing, as a matter of fact. Some of them they can't find. Matter of fact, there's some of them out there that they have released on their own recognizance, and they can't find them now. They admit that they're gone. They're in the wind.
So, we're going to see what happens to this investigation and how widened it becomes on January 21st, because obviously, under the current Department of Justice, nothing's going to happen. Under the new Department of Justice, we're hopeful that justice does prevail, but that remains to be seen. But
with regard to all this, Joe,
and as domestic terror problem in this country, and we're going to have to deal with it.
And as we continue to look at the video from the New Yorker,
on top of unemployment, on top of a cratered economy, and everything else.
But as we continue to watch the video taken inside by the New Yorker reporter and now outside as they're destroying the gear from the the television reporters who were there, when we start to look at all this and where it goes from here, there doesn't seem to be any large discussion on how they got there. Yeah, we're hearing it a little bit in the reporting right now. But how fearful should people be knowing that these groups, a lot of them, the investigation now has turned to the possibility that whether it's congressmen, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's National Guard, whether it's Capitol Hill Police, somebody's involved in helping them. And I'm not saying that that's been adjudicated at this point. It is all allegation. So we have to go from there. But the mere possibility that Americans are now looking at their law enforcement and their people who are their lawmakers, who are involved in feeding this and seeding this, how scared spitless do we have to be right now to realize that this is an America that we may not be able to get back in our lifetime?
Well, listen, this is going to get bad. I mean, I've written that this is going to end up being the greatest scandal in our lifetime. I mean, because it is going to come out that members of Congress assisted these people and that members of law enforcement were involved. I mean, there's no question in my mind. And the silence of it.
The silence of it from the lawmakers in itself is frightening, because certainly there's people already investigating them.
Yeah, I mean, when things are quiet, when nobody in law enforcement is just coming out and saying, no, that's not the case, that's the case. So it's kind of like, everyone in Congress is a person of interest in this case. And they're going to be
Isn't that a little bit of a stretch?
No, I think that you start out with everybody, and then you begin to narrow the focus. When you see this wacko congresswoman from Colorado who already got ratted out by two of her colleagues saying she was given tours to some of the domestic terrorists the day before they commit. That's serious stuff. She's going to probably get arrested. The least of her problems is going to be getting expelled from the House. I mean, so this is going to get very serious. Like I said, Merrick Garland was appointed Attorney General for a reason. And I think we're going to talk about this a year from now saying, oh yeah, now I see why I see why that Biden selected Garland, because he's got experience prosecuting domestic terrorists.
But isn't it fair to say too, and going back to what you just said, Joe, isn't it fair that while all this is going on, yes, something has to be done, but we can't knee-jerk, because there are not every single Republican was involved in trying to bring about a seditious effort against the United States. And certainly not every Democrat is a lily-white wonderkind angel who bears no responsibility whatsoever in some of the egging on and some of the vitriol that has run across this country in the last 4 to 6 months. It's not as if it's all just cut and dried and black and white in a sense like that. So don't we have to be really careful that we don't turn this into the Inquisition at this point and really go past what America stands for?
Well,
That's
no,
a danger.
I think what we have to be careful of is do the investigation the right way, and that means it's going to take time. But we're not going to both sides this. These were Republicans who encouraged these people to show up, and they got out of hand. And that doesn't mean Republicans who go, oh, it just got a little out of hand. That's not how it works.
Right, but not all Republicans. That's my point.
No, not all of them,
right.
But all in leadership roles who did not come out and say the election wasn't fixed, they bear responsibility.
Granted.
And, just because you sat in the car while your buddy was robbing the bank and shot and killed the teller doesn't mean you escaped a murder charge. That's not how it works. And I think what's going to happen is, as in all criminal cases, there are going to be people that start ratting each other out, because it's all fun and games. And Jenna Ryan thinks it's all wonderful until somebody sits down and tells her she's going to spend the next 25 years in jail. Then Jenna Ryan is going to sing like she's never sung before.
Well, it is all fun and games as well until you get
the onion involved. Who got you in? Who, and all of that. And that, that's why investigations take time. But there's going to be a shit ton of rats in this. You know why? Because all of these pseudo gangsters don't want to go to jail. From members of Congress to all the white people who stomped in the Capitol. They're all tough until they're facing jail time, and then they'll start talking.
Do we
Right
have,
now,
though,
it's too early in the investigation.
as a nation, do we have the stomach for this? Because this is going to mean publicized trials, Congress people in cuffs. This is going to mean a lot of jail time for a lot of people. This is going to mean the homegrown terrorists in this country are going to find brand new reason to get out there and bring their zip ties and bring their guns and get everything ready and wear the camo. Are we prepared to face what is an absolute frightening time in our nation? I don't know if we as a nation are prepared to go through with it and do what needs to be done on both sides.
Well, it's not a vote. I mean, they don't have a choice. If you don't, then the terrorists win. What's the answer? The answer is let them do whatever they want because they need to feel good.
I get
That's
it.
not how it works. I mean, you as a nation, you're gonna have to come to the realization that your head filled with misinformation for years and years and years, that some of your relatives and friends have lost their minds and their jobs and their families and their relationships over. All of this is going to hit the fan. There is a bill to be paid. I mean, if you're going to act like this, there is a bill to be paid. The difference between gangsters and these creeps who invaded the Capitol, gangsters understand sometimes I got to go to jail. These people think they got a get out of jail free card from their president.
Well, which could still happen.
He's not pardoning any of these people. He's not pardoning any of them.
You never know with this guy.
Any of these people, first of all, they could get challenged. Secondly, he basically admits his own guilt. I mean, and third, name 3 people not named Trump that Donald Trump has ever done anything for in his 40 plus years in public life. It's just not going to happen. What is the quote that was in the Washington Post from one Trump advisor? Is that he couldn't believe how bad his supporters look. I mean, he hates his own supporters. I said this to somebody recently. He wouldn't let any of the people that stormed the Capitol use the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, let alone be
look at it.
Let alone pardon him.
Ivanka and her husband wouldn't let the Secret Service use the bathroom in their rented house. The Secret Service had to spend $150,000 of American taxpayer money to rent a house near where the Trumps are living because they wouldn't let them in the bathroom. So that tells you something.
The whole thing is insane. But, listen, we have a cult problem in the country.
Yes.
And we're going to have to deal with that. And, people smarter than me are going to have to come up with solutions to how to deal with the cult problem.
Well, we do come to you because you are the smartest man in the room. It is a reminder once again that if you... Hey, come on, Tasso thinks so. So that's all that really counts, man. Let's face it there. That's fine. Reminder that if you want to read more about Joe Casale, he does not have a Twitter account. God love him, because he does call Twitter a sewer, and he doesn't have that one wrong 90% of the time. He is on Facebook. You go to Chef Casale, where you can find his writings there. And he's getting all kinds of people who are now asking to be your friends. What the hell's going on here, Joe? It's a run on Joe Casale these days on Facebook.
It's kind of a tell from these people, the bad taste that they have looking to friend me. So, I mean,
they want to see you make your eggplant amatriciana. They want to see all the food, buddy.
Once I see those kind of friend requests, I go, it makes me question your judgment in a very, very big way. So.
Every single time. Mr. Casale, always a pleasure, my friend. Be well, be safe. Pet the puppy on the head for me. We'll talk to you again. Thanks so much.
Sounds good, Ed. Have a good one.
He is indeed the smartest man in the room. Don't forget, check us out on podcasts. Don't forget to go to welcometothearena.com to go ahead and subscribe to YouTube, and be right back here for our other shows, Sports Pulse, and oh yeah, by the way, there's this show called The Press Corps that you absolutely have to check out, because quite frankly, what it is all about is really telling the truth with real news and real reporters. Thanks to Joe Casale. Thanks to you. Thanks, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner, and until next time, be safe. Be good to everybody. Rock on, true believers.
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over. All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.